Hello and welcome. I'm Riz Khan. He's a comedic powerhouse who's made a name for himself across the world with his cutting and incisive humour on everything from politics and race to getting older and dealing with traffic wardens. But there's a side to Omid Djalili that he takes seriously, not only as an Iranian-Brit, but also as a member of the religious minority, the Baha'i, who faced continued persecution in Iran. In a conversation that's both frank and hilarious, Omid tells me about his boundaries for what is funny and what is not, why he campaigns for the rights of the Iranian people, his faith and spirituality, and how working with composer Hans Zimmer and acting legend Oliver Reed on the blockbuster movie Gladiator left their mark on him, in more ways than one. Omid, great to see you again.
Shukran, Habibi. What a pleasure, ya wallahi.
Yeah, shukran jazilan. We'll do this one in English, though.
Okay.
So, quick question to start with is about British politics, because it's very messy now. And I'm wondering, as a comedian, do you actually follow the details of it, in terms of what's really going on?
Well, you're talking to a comedian, so I do follow it. You know, I was raised as a Baha'i, so we don't get involved in politics. So I was always detached from politics. But I think probably since Brexit, around 2015, 16, I got very interested. I got interested in the way politicians operate, the way they lie, the way, everything's so dramatic as well. I mean, one of my first jokes recently was about, but when Boris Johnson was voted in, I even was telling people we should vote, but I defaced my ballot. On the ballot, I got a pencil and I just drew a massive male member, not of Parliament, and I never thought he'd get in. I didn't realise everyone's drawing the same thing. So the way I observe it is that because it's all televised now, everything is getting more dramatic. And now we see in America with Donald Trump, I kind of sense, because he comes from showbiz, he would like to be in prison and then be voted in president from prison. So he could, when they say, how do you feel from prison, he'll just go, hello. It's like everything's so dramatic. So it amuses me. And I am engaged, but I'm not as engaged as you would like me to be as a kind of political, as an interviewer.
But you're right, I'm waiting for him to say, no one knows jail better than me.
Yeah, exactly. Very good.
Do you actually, though, do you have concerns about the way Britain's going, the issues?
Yeah, I do. I have concerns that we are becoming more extreme. I mean, there was Kylian Mbappe, who is a great footballer for the French national team. I saw him using a press conference asking people to vote, basically speaking to the young people, saying, you have a chance to, I suppose, influence the future of this country. And I think he was, the way they were framing it, that he's saying, don't vote for Marine Le Pen, but actually was like saying, let's try and avoid extremism. And I think that is the worry right now, that we seem to be, because everything's so dramatic, we are veering towards extremism, because as we see in the Middle East and everywhere, that's the thing that seems to be dominating politics right now, whoever has the most extreme views. And yet it's the names and the characters that dominate more than the issues quite often. Quite often, yes. I know, like if we talk about Rishi Sunak, there's lots of jokes about him being really small. Like every morning he uses step ladder to get into his underwear. Why would you even send Rishi Sunak on a plane? Why don't you just post him? That'd be a quicker way to go. So there's jokes about, and Keir Starmer has such amazing hair. His own hair has a Twitter account, his own X account called Keir Starmer's Hair. So yeah, there is that, because they're trying to engage people in politics as you do just like from a comedy perspective, which is why all these shows we have in Britain, Have I Got News for You? And the Daily Show, for example, in America, they're trying to engage young people through comedy to actually engage with the politics as well. So I think that's just something, the way things have developed. Well, in the election that's coming up now, which particular male member would you vote for this time? I wouldn't vote for anyone. I think politics has become such a dirty game. And I think that, yes, there are people who really want to do good. There are lots of people who are service-oriented. A lot of people want to help society. But at the moment, I couldn't affiliate myself with any political party, because I'm about love, unity and peace. If I join one group, I would have to be against another group, and that's not how I'm made up. What is important, though, is to recognise with your fame, with your kind of influence, you do have a voice that people would listen to when it comes to politics, and many comedians have used it, yes, to put themselves in a political position, so to speak. I wonder what you think about that. Do you think about the kind of influence you can have on people with the things you say? I think in general, certainly when we had the whole Mahsa Amini kind of revolution in Iran, it kind of hit a lot of us in a very visceral way because, again, as a Baha'i, I've seen so many Baha'is have been persecuted, and I think something triggered in me that a woman who just had showed a few strands of hair, and the people protesting against that have been shot in the face or killed. Hundreds of people have died. I think I felt I really wanted to help the people of Iran. So in a sense, the first thing they do in a revolution is they cut the internet. So you've only got a couple of Telegram channels. The tip of the iceberg is maybe 100 videos come out where maybe 1,000 are uploaded. So I wanted to use my platform to speak for the people of Iran. So they would say things in Persian and I would decipher it. And you can't just press Google Translate. It doesn't always make sense. So I'm trying to make it palatable for a British journalistic audience. So I was very, very honoured that Emily Maitlis and John Sopel from the News Agents podcast, they voted me as one of their People of the Year because they used to just visit my Twitter feed to see what's going on in Iran, and actually gave them stories. It gave them things to actually play with because they weren't getting any news. The only news you get is from the Islamic regime, which they couldn't really trust. So in that sense, I wanted to just use my social media as a service to the people of Iran to see what they would, so they would have a voice.
The irony is, the twist in the story is that you're a London lad.
Yes.
You know, and you're talking, about Iran. You're not a Muslim, you're a Baha'i, and we'll get into that in a second as well. So it's ironic, you're representing probably what people wouldn't understand really what you're representing. Yes,
actually a lot of Muslims have said to me, look, why don't you just become a Muslim, because we'll use you as a poster boy and you'll become a millionaire overnight. And I've had that with Jews as well. I've played a couple of Jewish roles. The last thing I played Reb Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. And all the Jews came down from London to Chichester where I did it. They goes, I'll just say you're Jewish, you'd be so... So they want me to represent, but in a sense I am representing because I'm of the Semitic race, and I do believe that we are a race. We have a certain kind of DNA. And I'm happy to represent any minority, but, I am who I am, but I also have this, I suppose as you get older, you just have this sense of moral obligation to stand up for the weak and the oppressed. And if I can do that in a very small way, then that's using my social media in a good way.
I love the sketch you did, one of your comedy stand-ups, about being Iranian yes. from the UK,
yes.
and having to say you were Ukrainian when you went. and this is one of the problems, especially in the US, and we both spend a lot of time there. There's a blanket judgment on people from Iran.
Yes.
It's a lack of understanding. It happens with the Arab world, with Muslims and everything else. How do you feel when you see that a whole race, a whole people, if you like, nationality gets tarnished with this brush?
And I think that's something, for example, from the very early on after October 7th, I did notice that there were certain things that they were talking about people in Gaza all being human animals, and then saying we're going to cut the electricity and cut the food and water. So I just said, this is what happens. Everyone gets tarnished with the same brush. And I was just saying, let's not dehumanize people. And then a lot of my Jewish friends said, look, they're talking about Hamas. And I was like saying, yeah, but it's not, that nuance is not being made clear. They're saying everyone in Gaza no one's an innocent in Gaza, and they're all human animals in Gaza. And that dehumanization leads to violence and leads to innocent people dying. So I think that is always the sense of nuance on social media and everywhere. This is the thing we have to guard against, human beings being dehumanized. And because I sense it, because I'm Iranian and people assume I'm one thing, but actually they don't see that actually I come from a faith that believes in the oneness of mankind and the unity of religions. But, the guy stamping your passport doesn't know that. He just sees Iranian guy and he sees someone not to be trusted. I wouldn't say that I'm a terrorist, but it's just like, what's your father's name? Ahmed. Okay, that's my father's name. Okay, what does he do? And they will ask everything about what my father. He goes, well, he made shoes. Really? Where? And they ask these questions about my dad.
Especially as there was a shoe bomber.
There was a shoe bomber. Yeah, exactly. There was a shoe bomber. So that's the red flag if you say he worked in shoes. It's a whole can of worms. So I think that's the thing that we have to, as someone who's working in the West, just by doing a show and everyone laughing and enjoying it, they think, okay, all right, that's kind of shifted my particular viewpoint of those people, because comedy is such a powerful thing. If you can make people laugh about your culture. I remember feeling very strongly about Russian people. When Russia invaded Ukraine, I made a big thing about we have to just, hey, let's not dehumanize all Russians just because of Putin. So I was doing Russian jokes in my show. I said, here are some jokes about Russians. And actually, I remember I heard this joke and made me think, oh, wow, Russians have a great sense of humor. And the joke was that you can't, during communism, you couldn't buy a car unless you like booked it 10 years in advance. And then you get the car 10 years later. He goes, congratulations, pick up your car in 10 years' time. And the guy goes, is that morning or afternoon? He goes, what difference is 10 years? He goes, I've got the plumber coming in the morning.
That's right.
See, that's a great joke. It's a Russian joke. So even the Russians can make fun of their situation. So I think it's very important to realize that comedy is a great leveler. Comedy makes you feel much closer towards a people, a culture, because it makes sense of everything, because it works on a human level. It's
very hard because, of course, in Iran, when everything is kind of restricted, it's very difficult for people to express themselves. Yes. And, of course, you had mentioned the protests. I wonder, do you feel that anything might change since President Ibrahim Raisi was killed in a helicopter crash?
Raisi died in a helicopter crash, and you know it's something that made worldwide news, and people were doing jokes about that. It's a difficult one to talk about with change, because people have always wanted change from literally a couple of months after the Islamic Revolution of 1979. People were calling for change straight away. They didn't think this was going to be a hardline Islamic kind of hardline extremist revolution, so there was a lot of pushback there. I think change is inevitable because we're living in a world where, just with TikTok, I mean, I know certain social medias are controlled, but when young people are seeing that people are living a free life and you don't have the same freedoms inside Iran, the young people are going to protest. They are going to say, what is this? So change is inevitable. The big question is, will that regime be changed, or will the regime themselves change? And from what we see, where they're cracking down even more, I don't see any change coming from that particular regime.
And then, of course, you need new leadership, and that's always difficult when things are restricted.
Yes, so, but I mean, is leadership, is it going to be any different from Ibrahim Raisi, who was nicknamed the Butcher of Tehran? There was a woman who already put herself forward. I don't think the Constitution allows a female president, but she put herself forward and said, hey, I've been asking for executions, you know, I'm happy to kill people. And they said, okay, well, we'll consider you. So as to what the criteria is very interesting. So no, I don't think anyone's expecting massive change within the regime.
I was going to ask you if you ever had any political ambitions, but you're kind of smart and articulate, so I wonder if that rules you out.
I'm too smart. I'm too smart to get involved in any kind of political thing. But I am interested. I think that at the end of the day, you know, I'm in society, and if you're in society, you have to be interested in the social discourses. And as a comedian, you wouldn't be relevant otherwise. You've got to know. I mean, I'm on social media, I would say on average, probably about 3 hours a day, just to check what's going on, just to be au fait. And I've got lots of friends who send me stuff because, hey, have you heard this? Be aware of this. So I've got, and comedians as well, we send stuff to each other. Hey, have you got a joke about this? What do you think of this? I said, well, actually, that could work, but why don't you say this? Yeah, that's great, I'll try that. Did it work? It worked great. So that kind of thing, we have discourses amongst ourselves. That's kind of the way it works. So yes, to be on top of it, I think is very important as a comedian these days. I
love the fact, this kind of behind the scenes, that the comedians collaborate. You kind of imagine everyone holds on to their stuff.
No, we collaborate. I run stuff by about 4 or 5 friends, comedians who are friends, not just anyone. We talk about things, and we also want to be sure that because we're both talking about similar areas, okay, how about if I do this joke, you do that joke, just so that we don't cross over, because if someone's got a joke, that's their joke. And the comedians are very, very clear about no one stealing each other's material and just being clear. And then if you've got a joke, they go, that's good, but actually someone else is doing this. Okay, so we're all in the business and we all help each other. Like, okay, you want to go down there, be careful you don't go into this person's territory. So I think that kind of thing happens a lot. But also we know that we've got to go out and try stuff. So there's lots of tryout nights. We go to comedy clubs and we often call each other at night. I'm on the phone all the time. How did it go? How did you do it? I did it. You were too fast with your delivery. Maybe you need to say this before. So yeah, that sense of workshopping is always there.
I love this.
Goodwill. There's always goodwill with comedians. That's the great thing. We're all damaged individuals. You know, we're all mentally ill. So we are a group of people. We're friends.
How are you damaged, Omid?
I'm damaged. I mean, look at me. I'm one of the most damaged looking people. In fact, I can't even look at my first ever Live at the Apollo, the one show that I did in 2004, 2005. Everyone says, I saw a show on Live at the Apollo. Oh, Omid Djalili's set was amazing. It changed my life. Oh, it inspired me. I can't watch it because all I see is a big, fat, mentally ill person. But actually, that's also very good because you're not conscious. As a comedian, I was not a very conscious person. I just did what I thought was funny. And some of it I can see now. I've watched a bit of it that I can bear to watch. Some of it's funny and some of it's very like free of any ego.
Yeah.
It's just open, but it's also a pretty crazy person doing it.
A confession, actually, I hate watching myself on TV.
Yeah.
All these years, seriously. If it's recorded and it's edited and everything, I don't watch it again. It's just like...
I think it's also because I know some of the difficulties I was going through at the time. And for example, I'll give you an idea that I had a son. I used to use his horse. His little toy horse. I used to do this kind of Black Beauty thing in the middle, like a dun dun da 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 da.
You're dating yourself, of course.
Yeah, quite old thing. It was just about 20 years ago. And I put the horse in my pocket. It was just like a non sequitur. And I rushed back 5 miles. I said, "Where is the horse?" He was asleep. He goes, "This is my horse." He'd taken it back from my bag. I said, "You never take my horse." He goes, "It's my horse." I said, "No, it's my horse. I get a laugh. This makes us money." So I remember my kids were very scared of me at the time. The daddy's crazy around. He needs our toys. So when I look back at certain things, I think, my goodness, I was irrational. I was kind of all over the place. I was eating too much. So that's why I don't like to see myself. But at the same time, I also appreciate myself because it was open, it was alive. And sometimes we listen to the crazy comedians because they actually sometimes say the truth.
And, you know, it's interesting. Politicians are seen as a gift for comedians. George W. Bush provided so much humour for the comedy scene. President Obama, suddenly, you know, there was hardly any jokes around once he was in power. He was considered boring in that way.
Yeah, he wasn't stupid enough. I think stupid works great. I mean, when George Bush was saying things like the French are so dumb they don't even have a word for entrepreneur, you know, stuff like that. It's a gift. You know, these people are a gift. Donald Trump was a gift. God bless him. Whatever people think of him, when he was no longer president, I didn't see many people doing Biden jokes apart from an old guy. Well, that's it. What is that? You know, so actually a little bit of crazy does help with the discourses. I want to talk about your acting because a lot of people might not realise they know you from the comedy scene, but often you might kind of not get spotted because you're in you know, character or whatever in a movie, but you've done a lot of movies. The Mummy, yes. Mamma Mia 2, The Infidel. I remember seeing you with Heath Ledger in Casanova. Yeah. You know, so there's a lot of... Do you enjoy the acting as much as the stand-up? Maybe more? I don't know. I did. I thought my life was just going to be on massive film sets, like big films. Very soon in my career, I did The Mummy, Gladiator. It was James Bond. It was like a spy game with Brad Pitt and Robert Redford. It was all, I just thought that was my life now. And then 9/11 happened, and in fact, I'd had a kind of spiritual experience where I was talking to God after university, and I said, "Well, God, what do you want from me?" As you know, typical Middle Eastern guys, "Please, Ya Allah, help me, guide me." And this voice kind of said, "You'll do what you're doing. You will become an actor. But then after a few years, something will happen which will tell you to turn left. So just go with it." And I think that was 9/11. When 9/11 happened, and actually, interestingly enough, I just won the Time Out Comedy Award for Best Stand-Up, which is a huge award. And it was a bit of a surprise that I was chosen among them in Britain. I was the first ethnic minority to win it. And I thought, wow, what is this? But it was just a few months before 9/11. So then when 9/11 happened, and I was effectively cancelled, before the days of cancel culture. That's right. Yeah, because I was a Middle Easterner, nobody... And when we say cancelled, it means you're doing a sitcom. They said, "We don't need Omid to come in today. He's off the show. I've got a corporate gig. Don't want him. How about those comedy club gigs? No thanks. I've got a run of gigs around the country, taken off the bill." So I was literally cancelled. And I think I wanted to use the power of comedy to save my career. So I actually talk about it in my new show, which I'm touring. I actually identify the moments and the jokes that were said at the time, which healed a traumatized Western society where they thought, "Well, we can't trust you. We can't trust your people. People who kill themselves for what? For killing other people." And actually identify those moments and the way my career trajectory changed. And I went more into comedy rather than dramas. And that's something I just had to go with. I always liked doing the films, But actually, it was a little bit easy. It was too easy, and this was a great challenge that God threw me. And I say God because I really believe that was I stepped up to a call to use my voice in the English-speaking world to try to help, you know, ordinary Middle Eastern people who are being pilloried and cancelled by using comedy to kind of change the perception of how people were seen.
So it was 9/11, and here's me thinking all the time you quit acting, or reduced your acting because you had your privates grabbed by Oliver Reed in Gladiator.
No, that was actually a great pleasure. That was one of the great pleasures of my life. Although it was, when you look back at it, you could say, whoa, Me Too movement, that's a Me Too moment. And actually, do you know what was interesting? There was somebody watching that scene, as this German guy. And I said, what do you do? He goes, yeah, I'm doing the music. I said, what's your name? He goes, my name is Hans.
That's all.
And it was Hans Zimmer. And I said, so why are you here? He goes, yeah, sometimes I like to just watch the scenes and maybe I can make some music. And I said, what have you done before? He goes, yeah, I have done a lot of, he said these films. I said, I've never heard of him. Have you done anything I might have heard of? Which is like the worst thing. He goes, where are you from? I said, from England. He goes, yeah. He goes, in fact, there was a show I did. It was a game show with Henry Kelly called Going for Gold. I went, going for gold. He goes, yeah, I wrote that. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that guy, this is going to be terrible. This film is going to be absolute crap. What are we doing? And he said, yeah, it's 4 notes going, but it's very catchy. He goes, it's very, I said, yeah, but not in a good way. When, you know, it's like when Germany invaded Poland. They invaded them, but that's not a good thing. And he got a bit kind of like, are you comparing my Going for Gold to Germany invading Poland? So then we watched the scene. Oliver Reed grabbed my nether regions.
Going for Gold.
You're going for gold. He grabbed me. He grabbed me, and then afterwards I went up to him and I said, yeah, I could see he wasn't pleased with me. I said, so Hans, how would you score that scene? And he looked at me and goes, what is the smallest musical instrument you can think of? And I said, a piccolo? He goes, it is still smaller than your penis. I died laughing. I just died. He had a sense of humour. Yeah. And everybody had a sense of humour. For a German, everyone had a sense of humour. So we actually had it was quite stiff when I came on set, but after these moments, actually, Ridley Scott told me afterwards, because after you came and he said this and that, he said that, the atmosphere changed. So actually, you saw the transformative power of comedy. Yeah. What was a very tough set then became a joyful set.
On a slightly more serious note, how do you regard the way minorities are portrayed generally? Because, you know, I've spoken to actors from minority backgrounds, as they'd be considered, who say, well, you know, I'm hoping for something that would be like not me cast with a turban or, you know, as a dark-skinned person in a typical role. How do you feel about the way things have progressed?
Things have changed a lot now, because you see casting breakdowns and they say, here's a character of Dave. I'm playing a character called Steve, the second series of a show called The Change by Bridget Christie, and I play her husband Steve. And she was the wife of Stuart Lee, a comedian I really admire, and they both said, we want you to kind of play a version of me. Because I said, what? Because I'm big, fat and hairy? He goes, yeah, you are. But also, it doesn't necessarily mean it's Stuart Lee. So it actually really works. So I am getting parts with names Steve.
Right.
But at the beginning, it really was, you know what it's like, the Riz, you go in there. And I'm actually asking people, I said, so these lines of yalla and walla, do you want it Lord, wallah, yalla? What would you like? It's the higher thing, yalla, yalla. That's what we want. So it was that kind of thing they were looking for. But actually, I will give props to Stephen Sommers, who, when we did the film The Mummy, he rang me. I was living in Hounslow. Now, you're an Osterley boy. You're an Osterley boy. And I was living in Hounslow. And he rang me up. It was my first big major movie. He goes, hey, Omid, I just want to say you're a comedian. So, you know, if you want to throw stuff at me, just keep throwing stuff at me. Just improv. He goes, many times I'll say that won't work, but just have a thick skin, don't be upset. And I did that. And actually, in that film, there's probably a couple of lines. I said, and if there's only something where it's been offensive to Middle Eastern people, where I'm coming down on a rope and someone goes, "Poor, what a terrible smell," that wasn't me, because I would have said, "Hey, don't do that," because it was a stunt double. I wasn't there that day. So in general, I was always saying, I actually told them, you guys don't know how to write for Middle Eastern people. Now, I'm not actually Egyptian, I'm Iranian, but I care enough about the people of Egypt and Arabs being portrayed. So if you don't mind, let me just let me just kind of massage the lines, or if I'll give you a couple of lines, just so that, yeah, sure, you've got a character who's the bad guy, but let's not make him too bad. Let's make him have a sense of humor. And in fact, he said yes. And then the producers, who were told, what's this funny guy do? Why is he making it funny? We've already got another funny guy. And the main producer said, we're going to have two funny guys. There was a character called Benny in that movie. He was meant to be the comedy relief. And then because he liked what I was doing, the guy from Universal Studios said, because they were thinking of firing me, they said, who's this guy? Get rid of him. We need someone who's really awful and who we were going to hate. And the main producer said, and Stephen Summers, no, we like him. We're going to have two funny guys. In fact, he's created the tone of the movie, because the very first scene that was shot was where Brendan Fraser's being hanged, and we're in the prison. There was the first 3 days of filming, which actually set the tone of the movie, which was real, like a horror movie, and it's like scary, but there's a very bit of fun. Like when I goes, the guy goes, any last request? He goes, yeah, let me go. He goes, yeah, but hello, and I go, yeah, man. Of course we don't let him go. Yalla, bada! So I shout these things. So there's that was all the comedy that came on the moment. So, and I feel that a lot of Arabs kind of understood that actually what I was trying to do was just take it, for the first time, just take it away from like the typical Arab smelly bad guy.
Now, let's delve into your roots a bit, because you've referred to this, your Baha'i roots. It's a religion many people don't understand or know. A minority group persecuted across Iran and the Middle East. But with this, as you've mentioned, tolerance for all and a strong spirituality. And you describe yourself as a spiritual person. What does that specifically mean to you?
I think being a Baha'i is a way of life. That's what it is. And it's something that, as I've got older, it's something I've chosen for myself. It's something, just because you're born into a faith doesn't mean you should follow the Baha'i faith. And actually, one of the main principles of the Baha'i faith is personal investigation after the truth. So just because your parents are Baha'is doesn't mean you're a Baha'i. I'm actually fifth generation. In fact, I come from a group of poets who found the Baha'i faith around 1900 and actually were responsible for teaching the Baha'i faith. They were going around doing poetry shows and then teaching the Baha'i faith, and many people became Baha'is. And it was a faith that it was, I suppose, that there was a very strong connection with Islam, because it grew out of Islam in the same way Christianity grew out of Judaism. So there is this connection. So Baha'is believe that they are the latest but not the last chapter of this eternal, ever-revealing faith of God, which is a different chapter, which is starting from Abraham all the way to what the Baha'is believe, the Baha'u'llah, which is the glory of God, which is the latest but not the last kind of messenger of God. So for me, it's a way of life. And because there's a very strong emphasis on the arts, there's a very strong emphasis on humor as well. There's a strong emphasis on growing through the arts and growing through spirituality, that, the laws of a faith are not about restricting you. They are the choice wine. And well, we don't even drink, but it's in this is the choice wine. So if you stick to the boundaries, actually you can grow. And actually you can see that in music. There was a time where they put boundaries in music about how many notes per octave, but actually this is where Bach and Beethoven work. So actually some of the great musical scores came out of these boundaries. So I understand rules, regulations. I understand these things that can actually help you grow. So it's a way of life that I've adopted, which I've also wanted my children to investigate for themselves. And it's something I'm very glad, as conscious human beings, they've done for themselves too.
And I think your wife too has adopted it.
Yes. She found the Baha'i faith herself 30 years ago, and doesn't seem to have any regrets. And it's something that actually any person who comes into the Baha'i faith, it is the second most widespread faith on the planet. And I think this one message of if people understand this one message of the Baha'i faith, that we are essentially one, that's not a nice idea. It's actually a universal truth. Religion is one. God is one. Religion is one. Mankind is one. If people understood this as a gift to humanity, this is the healing medicine for the world. If we understand that, then actually it's the beginning of a lot of troubles being resolved. You can't do it overnight. If you look at Israel-Palestine, they know we're all the Semitic race. They know it. But if we really understand the fundamental oneness of mankind, then I think we'll see that as the starting place, as the cornerstone for eventual world peace and world unity.
And you're a small community, essentially, though, aren't you?
It's about 7 million at the moment, but actually we're quite...
At a global scale, I mean.
On a global scale, but Baha'is are... It's an NGO with the United Nations. They're they're quite influential in that sense. The Baha'i faith is actually quite reasonable. In fact, there's a self-destruct button there. If the Baha'i faith ever becomes a cause of extremism or of kind of contention and strife and wars, you kill it. It's better to be without. You have to kill that religion. Any religion that then becomes the cause of strife has to be finished. So there's a self-destruct button in the Baha'i faith as well.
Now, you and I grew up in London. I mean, you were a bit younger
We're West
than me.
London boys, Riz.
There you go, that's right. Well, one thing, though, you're a couple of years younger than me, but you experienced the same kind of things I did growing up, the phase of skinheads and racism and so on. And I was lucky. I didn't really have any experience with racism, very little thing. I might have looked for it, saying, why did that person ignore me or whatever, but generally I didn't. But I think you experienced quite a lot. And it shaped the way you thought.
It did, because I thought I was protected. So, see, I went to a school called Holland Park School, which is actually in Holland Park in West London, and the emblem for the school is a black hand shaking hands with a white hand. It was very diverse. We had 44 countries represented, and also if you play for the football team, you're pretty much protected. I had all the toughest guys so I was kind of fine. And then I don't know what happened when I was in like 13, 14. Some kids were 15, 16, just started victimizing me because they thought I was funny. I did sketches for the school assembly. And a lot of the girls saying, oh, he's funny and he's great. And I don't know what happened. I became very popular in the school as the funny guy. And then they came to bully me. And then they started like, I said, don't bully us. Don't bully my group. I can make you laugh. And I was like doing Egyptian dances and things. And they would start laughing. And I think they saw the power of it. But then they beat me up really badly in front of everyone to teach everyone. So you can't get away with just laughing. So I was off school for a week because I was beaten up so badly, and that made me realise that actually, you know, comedy can heal to a point, but there are racism, and they did beat me up because of my background, and it was because the things they were saying when they were saying to me was just so awful to repeat. So I realised that actually racism is a real thing, because I was kind of in a bubble thinking, well, I'm in a school which is diverse, they're never going to touch me, and they did. So it's something that has shaped me. I've been aware of it. I'm now aware of it as kind of like passively, where people are saying, your people. Right. And then somebody recently saying, you know, you had your own television show on BBC One and we thought you were Oxbridge. It's like somebody said, I said, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, we just thought you were one of us. So, and there is this kind of Oxbridge mafia, and because I was educated, they just assumed that I'd gone to Oxford, Cambridge, and made me think, wow, that's the reason I got a TV show. So it worried me a little bit. It's so interesting you say that, because I think one of the reasons I didn't get too much discrimination, or if people might have gone in that direction, is possibly because I sounded more British than the British for people. I think that was a big factor. I was born in a British colony. So I came with probably a high standard of English, having had it beaten into me by nuns at a convent school. But the thing is that it made me then want to ask you how much you experience class issues here in Britain. Yeah, class is a huge thing. That's something actually a lot of people they underestimate. Class issues are a huge thing. I remember once in class, never forget, I was 7 years old. I was 7 years old, and because my parents came from two different classes in Iran, but it was never a big thing. But because we lived in Kensington, I remember asking my parents, what class are we? And my mother, with the flag, we are aristocrats. And she was like joking, we are upper class, like that. But she was like saying it because she had a hairnet on. She looked so awful. She was joking. And I remember being in school, and the class came up, and the teacher said, what class are you? And some kids said, well, we think we're middle class. Someone said, I think I'm working class. I said, what about you? I said, I'm an aristocrat. And she goes, why? I said, we are upper class. We're upper class. And she goes, why are you upper class? I said, I am. I just am. I feel it. And she said, no, you're from the Middle East, so you're working class. I remember thinking, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense at all. But what she was saying is that know your place. As far as we're concerned, you're not one of us. So you have to work your way up, and you start at the bottom. Because it's not about money. It doesn't matter at all, does it? No. With class. I'm not saying we're particularly rich anyway, but because we lived in Kensington, I just assumed that we would... You know, Kensington is a place where it's so posh, we're the only borough to have a Kentucky Fried Pheasant. You know? So I'm really proud to be from a really posh area. KFP. And yeah, exactly. And I look at the way I talk, I am quite posh. And I think that was very clear to me, that you have to start from the bottom. You're working class, work your way up, mate. I'm going to throw it out there because it is there, out there. Levels, what you've just been saying. How did you fail A-levels 6 times? I mean, are you in the Guinness Book of Records? I think I am. I took 13 papers. I think it was 13 separate A-levels I failed.
Okay.
49 papers. I think it's because I was just very badly taught, because I can tell you, Riz, right now, every time I came out of that exam, I was going A, possibly a B. I think I've shaded an A. And you go, F? What the hell? How can I get an F?
It's for fantastic.
Yeah, well, fantastic. It could be, but something like O-level pass, like just enough to get an O-level grade. I couldn't understand it, and I just think I was. I think also I remember once my mother could see I was writing long essays. Where 3 pages were enough, I wrote 20, because she'd like say, she'd go, if you're going to get an A, you've written so much. So it was like that, like quantity over quality. So I think that's probably because in the exam I wrote so much, but it was probably all nonsense.
And then you faked your way into Ulster University, apparently.
I'll tell you how I did it. I faked my way into, it's very interesting, and it doesn't happen anymore. I may be the anomaly that changed everything, because in the old days, if you didn't get the right grades, I remember you got certificates as well. I tried I had an E in one thing. I tried to draw a little bum on the E to make it into a B. But you showed it because this is clearly you've drawn something. So this is how it happened.
Use the same colour, it helps.
Yeah, I should have used the same. I just used a pencil when it was like pen. But this is how you did it. If there's anyone who wants to get into university, back in the 80s, and I think a few of us did, you didn't get the grade, so then it comes back with something saying clearing. So it's a computerised form, but you put it in handwriting what your grades are. And I thought, well, how are they going to know? What difference? They will know I've got a couple of E's and a nothing O-level pass. I'm not going to put that in. So to have a chance, I just lied. I put B, C, D, E, okay? And I put it in, handwritten. And then I started getting offers from I went to Lampeter University, University of Ulster. And so I went, Ulster said, come and have a look at the thing. So I went along, had a look, and I had my interview, and the guy goes, so we're just going to go over to the computer printout. I thought, oh, God, they're going to find out now. This is it. So I was all prepared to say, Professor, I'm so sorry, I lied. Then I saw on the computer printout, it said, Omid Djalili, B, C, D, E. And I was like, this is a miracle. So what I wrote down, somebody, again, probably just wrote it down. Somebody who wasn't doing their job.
He's done 4 A-levels, so
yeah,
that was 4 A-levels. That's something.
But I think that particular university, it was the University of Ulster in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, in the northernmost tip of Northern Ireland, Coleraine, where nobody wants to go to. I think what they did is that they saw my grades and they knew what I did, but they just printed out just to make me think it was a miracle. I think that's what happened. Or it really was a miracle. I don't know. But I went and did my university education. And in fact, this is the thing, Riz. This is the thing, and I want everyone to know. I wasn't thick. I wasn't stupid, because when you saw the final grades, the way they used to do it at university, there's a printout on the wall, and it's top person at the very top. So I started looking from the very bottom. 168 people in combined, it was called Combined Humanities. I started looking from the, I didn't do well. Then I go up. I was in the top 10. I was in the top 10. So I wasn't thick. I did very, very well. And I think whatever happened in my life with the A-levels that was probably distracted or wasn't taught very well, it proved to me that I wasn't a thick child. I was actually quite intelligent.
I think your success would prove that anyway. You have to think quickly. You have to be able to...
Thank you!
Yeah, see, yeah. All the drama's there. You know, one thing I did hear was your story about university, and again, it refers to your Baha'i faith, how, you're football crazy, and you were doing well on the football team, but then you were kicked off the football team because you were Baha'i.
Yes, that was, just to be clear, we're talking about 2 different football teams. There was the university football team, where I was never kicked off, and it was a great experience. I got my stats. I played 52 games, 9 goals, and it was all there, and it's great, and I'm still friends with a lot of those players. There was a 5-a-side league, which was very interesting. There was a very, very competitive 5-a-side league, and every year they had this competition. Start off with, it must have been about 50 teams, and there was a bunch of Iranian guys. They said, you play football, come play with us. And I started playing with them, and we started going through the rounds. And I was scoring the goals, and we got to the semi-final, and we were losing 1-0 with about 2 minutes to go, and I scored 2 quick goals, and we got to the final. We were going crazy. And then one guy I became very good friends with it, and then he said something about the Baha'is. I said, don't make fun of the Baha'is, I'm a Baha'i. And he couldn't believe it.
And he was Iranian as well.
He was Iranian, and he was a very liberal guy. had a girlfriend, would drink and all that kind of stuff. And I was amazed that, I said, what is your problem with the Baha'i? He goes, there's no way you're a Baha'i. You're too normal to be Baha'i. And I said, what have you heard? So he said, I'm telling you, this is when I was at school, we heard you had sex with your mothers. We heard you had tails, literally tails like animals. We heard all these things. And I said, oh my God, is that what the propaganda? He goes, state-sponsored propaganda. He goes, and he just went back, he goes, I've been lied to. I said, well, I can tell you, none of us have tails. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think anyone has had those kind of relations with our mothers. That doesn't happen at all. So I would say yes. And it made him think a lot. But the thing was, the other players didn't even look me in the eye. They got to the final, they lost. But even when I saw them, that was my first year. So I still saw these guys around the university. And whenever we walked past the corridor, they always averted their eyes. That's how prejudiced they were towards me. So it made me realize, however bad that is for me and uncomfortable, how bad must it be for the Baha'is in Iran?
It's interesting, when you started out in the mid-90s, probably, with the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and so on. You did one show, actually, with a fellow Jewish comedian.
Yes, Arab and the Jew.
Yeah, that's the Arab and Jew, Ivor Dembina.
Yes.
And it was interesting because he himself is quite kind of cutting with his humour about Jewish culture and everything else. And I guess it was probably easier in those days because when you look at the views now, it's very hard to make any kind of joke that might kind of challenge what would be considered, anti-Semitic or whatever. It must be a much harder time to pick these kind of subjects.
That particular show was the Edinburgh Festival in 1996. If you remember, in November 1995, Yitzhak Rabin was shot by an extremist Jewish person. Yigal Amir, yeah. And he was so offended by that because we'd had the Oslo Accords and Bill Clinton was at the White House and everything there seemed to be some hope, and that really destroyed. So we thought we could do this show. I love Ivor. He's very funny, but he's a refusenik. A lot of other Jews say, oh, he's a self-hating Jew. I said, what does that mean? He goes, there are some people who don't like their Judaism. But it was something we really wanted to do, to use comedy to say Israelis and Palestinians don't want this. They don't want war. And I think that was a lovely thing. There was talk of us, being nominated for the Perrier Award that year, but there was a lot of interest in that particular show. But it was something it was the first time I really thought we can use, comedy as a healing power, as a transformative thing, to make sense of things. That's all we do as comedians. Comedians can only shed light and bring sense to stuff that doesn't make any sense. So that was the first attempt, 1996. So yeah, it was called Arab and the Jew, and we toured it, and it was... and I'm still very good friends with him as well, so it's great. So
it comes down to also how easy it is to tackle subjects like Israelis and Arabs or Israelis and Palestinians because of the increased sensitivity over the recent times.
It is. It's very difficult. And it was probably easier back in 1996 because it was all so raw and we just went for it. I think now, even when I was doing some warm-ups for the show I'm doing now, where I would say there's about 15 minutes of stuff about Israel, Palestine, you've got to couch it now. And it's not so much about cancel culture, because cancel culture is a real thing, but it is about, I suppose, making messages land. So sometimes I feel your setups have to be a little bit longer. You have to say a little bit more. But I think audiences are so thirsty because if they know you're funny, and if you take a little bit longer with your setup, they know there's going to be a comedic payoff. And they know, they trust me, I'm not there to make fun of people's suffering. That's a boundary. I would never do that. But I do think that they really trust that I'm going to try and bring some sense to it. And when I toured Canada recently, a lot of people came up to me saying, that was a new take, that was fresh. I never saw it that way, because for them it was very black and white. And I think this is one of those conflicts where people say, oh, for God's sake, Omid, will you pick a side? And I say, I have picked a side. And that side is peace, love, and humanity. And I know that it's extremism. You ask any Arab, ask any Israeli, any right-thinking person will say extremism is the dynamo that's pushing this, because there are people who have a lot to gain from this. A lot of arms dealers are making money. So actually, when they trust you, then you take them on a journey, and through the comedy, you can make sense of some of the crazy things going on.
I was thinking about those early jokes that, post 9/11 pushed the boundaries a bit, and it makes people's eyebrows raise, but it also makes them aware of the situation. Joked about seeing an Arab at the airport, or how Edgware Road in London has become like the new Mecca for Arabs, and so on and so forth. The interesting thing is the sensitivities are so strong now, there is the potential for a lot of backlash. And I was just thinking about what happened to Salman Rushdie not long ago, being attacked, losing one eye. And this is years after. We're talking, you know, nearly 4 decades after he wrote the book, The Satanic Verses.
Yes.
So it's like extremism has a long memory.
Yes, it does. And there is always that fear that even people watching this will probably think, oh, you know, he's a reasonable guy. He's awful. We don't like him. You know, that not everything you say everyone will like. Yeah. But even in the comedy world, the comedy police are saying, you know, you're doing an accent, you can't do that. So you can't please all the people all the time. But extremism is something that actually now we're very aware of. And it seems that the whole world is standing up against it. And I think that's something that it's very important to point out. This is not just, we used to be scared of extremists, but now I don't think there's any fear of it, because I know the sacrifices the people of Iran have made. I know the sacrifices they've made, you know, and they, in a sense, they don't care, because they've got to that point where they don't care anymore. It's like, kill me. There were some videos you see of Iranians say, kill us, we're just protesting for humanity. You want to kill us? That's on you. That really is on your soul and your relationship with your maker. If you think it's okay to do that, that's between you. And I think the world is getting to that point now. We don't care anymore. We're going to speak out, and I think it's important to speak out and always stand up for the truth.
There was a time, though, when people knew comedy was comedy.
Yeah.
But it seems now that political correctness has quite a chokehold on what comedians can say and do.
It does. I mean, in the sense that it's a little bit confusing for people, because if you follow a Twitter account, you think, okay, I'm going to get, this guy's going to be funny. And then they think, oh, hang on, he's coming out with political statements. He's coming out, he's standing up for a group of people in Gaza. He's standing up for this. What is this person? So those boundaries have been blurred a little bit. Like people say, oh, tell us a joke, mate. You know, it's like we've followed you because we want you to make us laugh. Mm-hmm. So it's difficult in the social media terms. And even now, look, I'm talking, I can guarantee you come to my shows, you'll see funny all the way through, and you won't actually hear me be too serious. I'll be serious for a while. I'll try and articulate my thoughts in a way that lands with an audience. But I think this is the problem where when we say political correctness, I'm kind of all for political correctness. If it, you know, I'm not here to offend. I think people forget that comedians want to make you laugh. We don't do things to, like you and I, if I say something that's offended you, I'll say, I'm really sorry, Riz. I didn't mean to offend you. I meant you to laugh. But you say, actually, you said something that triggered me with something else. I say, okay, I'm really sorry. I'll remember not to talk about that around you next time.
It's about intention, isn't it?
It's more than about intention. It's about, I think, there are certain ground rules here that comedians want to make you laugh. I think that's the thing. We're not there to offend you. And sometimes if we want to push the boundary, or we want to challenge a particular ideology, I think we'll do that as well. But we shouldn't be doing that with any fear. But actually, as I said, cancel culture is a real thing. And there is a real worry that people get offended on behalf of other people. Like we could be here and I'll tell a joke and then the producer say, hey, don't say that. Hey, like Riz doesn't like that. I said, really? Riz, what do you think? He goes, no, I've got no problem with that. And I said, okay, well, we stop speaking on behalf of he can speak for himself, okay?
Mm-hmm. For you, does cancel culture include essentially what people think of as woke culture? Is it the two combined, or they're separate?
No, I see. I don't. It's very interesting because we're in a morass where we don't even know. I don't know what woke means because it's used in such a kind of woke means being awake. Okay,
yes,
so which means being aware to people's sensitivities. For example, I would never make fun of things that people hold sacred. I would never do jokes. You know, as a religious person myself, why would I want to do jokes about Muhammad or Jesus? Why would I want to? You know, if it's something that's just trashing something that you hold sacred, why would I want to do that? Because I know it wouldn't make you laugh. So I think that when we're talking about woke, people say, oh, look, he's a woke comedian. And they do that in a way that it's really, really, you know, it's a negative thing. But actually, at the end of the day, is this person funny? And I don't think if you're really funny and you've got something good to say, all that stuff kind of goes out the window.
I know you'd mentioned actually about the Charlie Hebdo case, the cartoons about Prophet Muhammad in Denmark. You said why weren't people sensitive enough to know that this would be an issue?
Yes, I think there is a question here. You can never ever, to be really clear about it, you can never ever justify going in and blasting away a bunch of animators and cartoonists. Why? Why would anyone do this? There's no justification for it at all. But at the same time, when people repeatedly tell you this is sensitive to us. It's like if someone has a go, if I have a child that's got cerebral palsy and I've got friends who keep telling me jokes about my child, I say, look, guys, I've told you I don't like that kind of thing. Could you please stop it? Where is the point where I'm going to really be very strong in my boundaries? I can't be friends with you anymore. I would never kill anyone. I would never hurt anyone. But sometimes you have to understand that certain people have boundaries. In general, everybody has boundaries. Like, I don't like people talking too close because if they've had some bad food, I don't really want halitosis right literally 2 inches away from my face. I'll just say, excuse me, I'm a man and I deserve some space. And I don't like odours. Please, if you don't mind, I deserve some space. And I think that kind of thing, we just have to respect people's cultures and we have to respect people's sensitivities.
Yeah. As we kind of wrap up, are you okay doing a quick 10 fire questions, like 10 punchlines?
Absolutely.
Yeah, should we try this? What's the priority for the next Prime Minister, healthcare or immigration?
Immigration immediately, because it's been weaponised.
Who would do a better stand-up routine, Joe Biden or Donald Trump?
Donald Trump, 100%.
Would you rather live in New York or London?
London.
What's the worst thing for you, a joke falling flat on stage or not being recognised at all on the red carpet at a big opening?
Being not recognised on a red carpet, you wouldn't even see me dead on a red carpet. I don't like that kind of thing. I often go in round the back. I don't even say. But dying on stage is one of the most bowel-shrivelling, appalling. I try and avoid it at all times. It's happened so many times. I still wake up now about those moments that even happened 20 years ago. So yes.
Favourite movie, not one you've acted in?
The Graduate.
Would you rather do an action scene alongside Sylvester Stallone or a love scene with Scarlett Johansson?
Okay, this is a very difficult question, and I'm going to have to lie. I'd love to do an action sequence with Sylvester Stallone.
Okay, message received. If you had to go up against Tyson Fury or Bruce Lee, which one would you take on in the ring?
Oh my God, I would. If to choose who? Tyson Fury, of course. Bruce Lee was an animal.
Okay.
If I want to get smacked about the head a few times and then shake hands with the bloke, yeah. But if I'm going to die, it would be Bruce Lee. If Bruce Lee has been told terrible things about me, if people like feeding him lies about me that I've slept with his wife and all that, I wouldn't want to be with Bruce Lee.
As you approach 60, what aches more, your knees or your back?
Good question. I would say my back.
Doner kebab or caviar and blinis?
What kind of question is that?
Ones you've never been asked before.
Kebab with a bit of caviar on top is actually, I can recommend it.
Yeah,
yes,
like
but I'm a kebab.
Fusion, yeah.
Kebab.
Could AI ever end up telling better jokes than comedians?
No, and I tell you what, because I did try. I put in something, and AI is the worst kind of low-level, open spot level comedian I've ever seen in my life. I put in, if you were going to do jokes about Israel-Palestine, what would you do? And there's a whole splurge of absolute nonsense about Semitic stuff. There was a joke about Netanyahu, which didn't work. There was a joke about Sinwar that didn't work. None of it worked. It was whoever programmed it should. Actually, I'm glad you go and see live comedians, because it ain't going to be our AI. I'll tell you that 100%.
So you're safe for a while with your job.
100%.
Okay, last thought. As you approach 60, Omid,
yes.
Are you looking forward to getting your free Oyster card?
Okay, let's be really clear about something. When we talk about approaches.
Hey, I'm proud of mine.
We're still. I was still quite a couple of years away from that, because I am. I just turned 50 8 years ago. So So the 60, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to. I'll tell you this. This is a very, very good question. I remember Carlos Santana being very upset when they gave him an award for Hall of Fame. He was in the Hall of Fame. He was only 52 at the time. He was offended. He goes, "You usually give this award when people's finished." I'm still pregnant with a couple of other albums, and he did Supernatural, won 8 Grammys, and he said very clearly, the world does not belong to 17 to 27-year-olds. You can have a fabulous second act. So Riz, we're now at that age. I see you, look at you, you've got your own show, you're doing so much. We are both living our fabulous second act. And I think when you do that, you get an amazing second rush. They say, youth is wasted on the young. The things I know now, if I'd known back then, I would have been a genius. I would have been a global superstar. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a fabulous second act. So now I'm doing all the things I want to be doing. I'm very much in control of my destiny. I'm doing all the creative things I want to do. And I'm at the center of it. I'm driving all the creative. I'm working with the people I want to be working with. And I think that is a very important message for anyone watching this, is even if you're 50 or 60 or 70, it's never too late to have an amazing second act.
Very wise words, but I still love my Oyster card. Omid, till next time.
Thanks, man. Great talking.
Likewise.
Really wonderful.
Well, there we have the comedian, actor and writer Omid Djalili sharing some candid stories with me prior to a packed international schedule of stand-up shows that run well into 2025. But that's all we have time for on this edition of the show. From me, Riz Khan, and the rest of the team, we'll see you next time.